In another huge step towards complete takeover of this city and the police by the Trump administration, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced yesterday that she was stripping authority from the city's police chief and appointing the head of the Drug Enforcement Agents, Terry Cole, as the city's emergency police commissioner.
At my directive, we have made Terry Cole now the commissioner over the police. He runs the entire show, keeping everyone organized, and they report directly to me, and I report to the President of the United States.
The new chain of command means the city's police chief, Pamela Smith, must receive approval from Cole before issuing any directives to law enforcement. However, Washington, D.C. leadership is pushing back on the change. Democratic Mayor Muriel Bowser called the move unlawful. D.C.'s Attorney General also suggesting that the police department does not have to follow this order. Joining us now, former New York City Police Commissioner and the executive chairman of Teneo Risk, Bill Bratton. Eugene Robinson. Mr. Bratton has the first question.
Bill, I'm curious. I don't imagine you would have appreciated a federal takeover of the New York Police Department, but how do you view this situation with the Attorney General, given the president's lawful order to take some control of the D.C. police? How do you view this installation of a new police commissioner over the police chief in D.C., and how do you view the whole situation with the federal government inserting itself in this way?
They're creating a potential for mass confusion, being quite frank with you. The idea that the head of the DEA, who was newly appointed, trying to take over that massive organization, is now being given the additional responsibilities of running day-to-day the Washington, D.C. Police Department, which is a very complex city, very complex department. If the news accounts are correct this morning, this is not a done deal yet, that there's a great dispute between the City of Washington government, D.C. government, and Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General, as to does she have the power to effectively put somebody in over the Chief of Police. It's going to take a little while to clear up some of this confusion. I think it's actually untenable that the head of the DEA is going to be able to be there day-to-day to make decisions that the Chief of Police has to make. And if I understand correctly, what they're talking about is that the Chief of Police has no powers to independently issue policies, guidelines, or orders absent approval from the DEA head. No, I just don't see how this is going to work out. And this is in the city where the president does have significant power. And let's make no mistake about this. This is just a first step to going into other cities, as the president has made quite clear, including the city of New York, which I have a lot of intimacy with, in the sense of that department, the head of that department, Jesse Tisch, is doing an extraordinary job. So it's going to be a period of turbulence and uncertainty, and we don't need that.
No, we don't need that. David Ignatius, you can have the next question for the commissioner, but just I've noticed, I certainly know you've picked it up as well. There are some things that the mayor of Washington, D.C. is going along with. They're doing everything they can do to make this run as smoothly as possible, and are deferring to the federal government where they feel it's proper to defer to the federal government. They went around, they cleared out homeless encampments, saying get out and go to shelters before the feds come here, trying to prevent any terrible pushback or fights. At the same time, though, there are some things that the administration is doing that's clearly over the line, and they seem to be pushing back there in the proper places.
So, Commissioner Bratton, I want to ask you the question that any resident of Washington has on his mind, which is, will these steps help reduce our crime problem? We do have a crime problem in Washington. It's getting better, but it's still significant. And how are the individual officers who are the front lines in that fight going to respond to all this turmoil on top of them? What does that mean for a police officer in a patrol car trying to deal with crime every day? How are they going to be affected?
Confusion, instability, uncertainty. That's what's being created at the moment. Then the issue is sustainability. These surges are not uncommon in policing, my policing career. You surge into high crime areas, you get the problem under control, and then you move on. The federal government does not have the resources to stay involved in that city the way they are the last couple of days or the way they're going to expand in the next several days. That's the reality. And then if they want to expand into other cities around the country, you can't keep pulling DEA agents, FBI agents, ATF agents away from their primary responsibility to deal with their areas of concern, drugs, organized crime, terrorism, and put them on the streets to arrest immigrants. It's just not sustainable. And the confusion it's created in Washington, it's going to be a good test case in the sense of if they decide to do this elsewhere, how is it going to work? Right now, what they're setting up with the head of the DEA trying to run the day-to-day operations of that department and trying to run nationally and internationally the DEA, I don't see how they're going to do it. Everything I understand about him, he's a very competent administrator, worked with the DEA many years, but has no experience running a municipal police department in a city as complex as Washington, D.C.
So putting this conversation in additional context, the editors of the New York Times have a piece on America's historic drop in crime. As the editors note, these declines have erased the spike in crime that occurred during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the piece, crime rose during that era for two main reasons. First, pandemic policies undermined public trust and stability, stoked America's political divisions, and shuttered unifying places like churches, libraries, schools, and restaurants. The second lesson, according to the editors, involves the importance of law enforcement. Virtually all sides in the debate made mistakes during this intense period. Among the most damaging was the growing belief among Democratic officials that enforcing the law could be counterproductive when it involved low-level offenses such as public drug use, shoplifting, and homeless encampments. Some Democrats believed enforcement of these laws disproportionately hurt minority groups and did not contribute much to public safety. This argument never made much sense, especially given the polls showed strong support for basic law enforcement across racial and income groups. And Mr. Commissioner, would love to get your reaction to that piece, certainly making an argument, look, there needs to be law enforcement, but also seemingly tapping the brakes about overreach here.
I was fascinated by that New York Times editorial that so much of which they have supported over the past years, they're now recognizing they were wrong. The idea that small crime, quality life crime, broken windows, it does matter. To successfully deal with public order in the streets of America, you need to deal with serious crime and disorder at the same time. And the New York Times was one of the principal proponents pushing back against police dealing with disorder, the so-called broken windows. So that editorial fascinates me because it's basically a capitulation on the part of the New York Times, recognizing that they were wrong. It wasn't just Democratic leaders. They were wrong and not appreciating that cops count, police matter, and that police matter when they're doing two things: fighting crime, serious crime, and at the same time, simultaneously dealing with the causes of much of that crime, which is social disorder.